Yours is dark.
Cool. Who's is whose? Who's my audience? Who's your audience?
I don't know.
Well, that's my phone, so I'm going to assume that's mine. Hi, guys. It's Tuesday.
It is Tuesday.
Lacked a bit of energy, didn't it?
Yeah. Try again. Take Action Tuesday. This is a
We'll
shout
have
out
to
to
put the little note to say start at.
Yeah. This is a shout out to Mark McMillan because you named it Take Action Tuesday. So hey, Mark. Cool. What do you want to talk about today?
We seem a little stunned.
Because you ran in here 2 minutes ago. What do you want to talk about today?
We're going to talk about success today. So
What a great thing to talk about.
My hair is fun.
Makeup girl. Makeup girl. Wardrobe.
We're going to talk about our clients who have been successful. So we thought this would be a neat topic to discuss with you guys. One of the things that we can, attest to over hundreds of clients is that we're always able to get success in the short term. So, almost all of the time, Alan and I are able to see our clients meet their goals. Where there becomes sort of, layers of distinction in our clients is how they're able to bring that change into their life and then live the change. So we have some clients who have, their entire life has changed. They are truly, they write to us a year, 2, 3 years later, and everything about them has changed. They don't even recognize the person they were. So if they came to us and they felt really insecure about things, they don't even recognize that person anymore. Or if it's someone who didn't believe in themselves enough, had been in a career maybe for like 15 years where they didn't have the courage to step out, and then they step out and they find this whole new career or whatever it is. So
let me jump in for a second. Guys like Connor McMahon, right? Connor.
Well, wait. Let me just. So we have people like that.
I thought you were going on a little long.
No, yeah, clearly. So we have people like that. And then we have people who are able to maintain the change like in the context. So there's still, maybe it's like weight loss, or maybe it's a relationship that they were able to repair, or whatever it is, and they maintain that change and they can really successfully carry that change in that context of their life. But they may have missed, how to like let that expand and transpose into all areas of their life.
Transpose. Okay. Transcend.
And then we have some clients who keep the change for a while, and then something might happen that throws them off, and they call us a year or two later and they say, hey, you know what? I know how well it worked the first time. I've kind of lost the energy around it. Can we go back and do that again? And then we have, they're the smallest group, but we have clients who unfortunately don't maintain the practice. These are the ones that like go to the gym, work out, get in shape, and then, hire the best trainer and do everything right. And then they go home and they sit on the couch and eat potato chips again. And there are those clients too who don't keep the change. So what we thought was, we have, because we have such an enormous, database to draw from, and we stay in touch with lots of our clients, why don't we really focus today on that top tier, that 10% who were able to just get massive change and massive success. How do we pull out the things that they share in common and some really unique things that they incorporated themselves, and talk about that?
10%, huh?
Connor?
10%.
I don't know. The top
Yeah,
floor,
Connor McMahon. I mean, I like to talk about Connor. Connor lets me talk about his situation freely. Connor met me, he was in his mid-20s, and this just an incredibly talented young man, full of energy, full of passion, and being traumatized was holding him back, and actually it was, he was in a downward spiral when we were fortunate enough to meet. And Connor, in the course of our work, revealed that his real passion was to be outdoors and to be an outdoors person, fishing, guiding, or doing other work outdoors. And I joke with my clients that I don't want to be their friends, that I have enough friends, but I really want to get postcards from their amazing lives. And these are the people that Tara's talking about, the people that, they reach out to us every year. They send us a Christmas card, or when they're in town, they'll drop by and say hi. And so we've got in a rhythm with Connor now, that a couple times a year we touch base and see what he's up to. So here's a guy who was cycling in, becoming reclusive, and then discovered, actually acknowledged his passion for life. What made him really happy? And being outdoors makes Connor really happy. So after we finished the breakthrough process, about 4 or 5 months later, I get a text, a messenger from Connor, and it's a picture of him in a guiding boat, a fishing guiding boat. He's guiding at a resource in northern Manitoba, and the fish he has, the muskie, the head is by his chin, and the body's down here, and the tail is in the bottom of the boat, and his client is standing beside him. And I said, wow, that's an amazing fish. And he writes back and he says, all day long. And that was the start of his journey. And Connor moved farther north into the Yukon, and now he lives at Carr's Crossing in the Yukon. He has 23 Alaskan sled dogs in his team that he raises and he races. And so Connor, last winter or the winter before, sent me a small video, and it was a picture of a thermometer on the handles of the sled, and it was at minus 29. I don't care if it's Celsius or Fahrenheit, that's bloody cold. And then he panned out, and there were dogs in front of him, and he was out mushing. So Connor's sort of that poster boy for me in my client pool, for someone who had just come across a lot of tough lessons in life and was really struggling. But boy, he manifests the change, he embraced the change.
How do you do it?
He manifests the change, and he embraced the change, and he did this. You ready? Drum roll.
Sure.
He focused on what he wanted, and he took massive action. He focused on what he wanted, took massive action. Bruce Lipton, one of our favorite researchers and scientists, talks about this clearly, that we have to make the change in our unconscious mind, in our belief structures, in how we view the world and how we handle the world. But once we make those unconscious changes, then we have to get disciplined, and we have to focus on what we want, because focus drives our behavior and creates our results. We have to focus on what we want and take massive action in getting it. I can't think of a better example of moving up to the Yukon. He had 1 dog when he was here, and he has 23 dogs now, and racing in the dead of winter in Canada's Arctic. That's a guy who's taking massive action. We have tons of stories like that, right? We have tons of stories. And why don't you jump in?
So I would say that that's the common denominator. So if I were to think about, and I am thinking about, that top 10%, the ones that we just are so awed by and inspired by, and if we were to pick up the phone today to each of them and say, right now, what are you focused on? What is it that you want? They would be the ones that would be able to answer that question easily. They would be able to say to us, I want a happy relationship and a peaceful home. And somebody else might say, I want to get this book published by the end of the year, and I want to have, this much distribution. Or I want to push myself to the limit so that my physical health is better than it's ever been before, and I want to have that accomplished in 6 months. They will be able to articulate really, really clearly what they want. I want to just add something here. There's you guys have likely heard about Jay Shetty. And I was just listening recently to him being interviewed, and it was so interesting because he's so young, right? I mean, he's just so very young. I think he was 30 under 30, when he recently. Anyway, so I was listening to him, and he was describing how he did all sorts of study into ancient Sanskrit and all of these really, really ancient sort of rituals and beliefs and stuff. And they're very complicated and very confusing. And the guy interviewing him said, it's interesting because you have such a young audience, right? The people that follow Jay Shetty are these sort of millennials and, people
and
that
you.
are...
And you.
and then me.
Sorry, that was too easy. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But they watch it, and he's really inspiring to them. And so he said, how do you take that, these ancient texts, and then have this audience that seems so different, so incongruent? And he said, look, somebody, very famously, you've likely heard, I think it's Einstein, I know it's Einstein actually, who said, if you can't take something, regardless of its complexity, and explain it simply, then you don't understand it well enough. And
Beautiful.
I thought, and
That's
he said,
beautiful.
that's what I've done. I've gone to these scripts, and I am talking to a demographic who live today, who are young, who are, who were born into this day, not that one. And what his work is, the way he sort of embodies it all, is I just simplify it for today's language and today's people and today's challenges. And when I think about focusing on what you want, if we were to talk to these people, so often people feel like they know what they want. And I would say some of the clients that struggle more to stay focused, they know what they want, but it takes them 10 minutes to articulate it because they have to kind of, in and around, they feel like they have to explain it a certain way. The people that know what they want, what that would say to me is you don't know what you want well enough to say it simply. And the people that I know, I had a client once, I won't say her name because I don't have her permission, but she was amazing. She was so skeptical, which I often get. I seem to attract these very critical-minded, thinky people. And so she was very skeptical, but she had a fear of flying. And so she got this amazing job, and she had to get on a plane. She didn't want to turn this down, but she was just phobic. She could not get on the plane. So somebody had referred her to me, and she came in, and we worked through it, and we got her on the plane. And through that process, she sort of said, okay, you know what? That worked. So I'm willing to suspend disbelief, which is a phrase you'll hear Alan and I often say, just suspend disbelief. And she went for the whole breakthrough. And by doing that, she was able to get this massive amount of change. She came back to us a year or two later. Unbeknownst to me, she'd been referring people to us all along, but she came back and she said, you know what, I want to learn what you guys do. I want to learn how to do what you guys do.
Yeah.
Then she took our course, and then she was so skeptical the whole time. God bless her. She hung on to this really critical perspective of everything, but she committed to herself every day. This is what I mean by the simplicity. She said, I have this part of me that will always question everything. But what I want is I want to be able to change people's lives the way you guys change lives. And so I'm going to learn what you learn. And I'm going to suspend disbelief, even though some of it makes her brain just scream with what? How could this possibly work and all that stuff? But she was so congruent with this simple, absolute, I want to learn how to do this, knowing that afterwards she could go back and reflect and modify and change and question and all that stuff. But she committed to the process. And then she went on and she did another training with us.
Yeah.
And then she went on and did some trainings with some other people who were doing things that are related to what she wanted to do too. But this is someone who is so successful today. And she just decides what she wants. And her secret or her trick is just no matter what the questioning is that's going on for her, she remembers what she wants. She knows that this may be the only step she needs to get there, or this may be one of many steps. And so she stays absolutely focused on understanding it to the best of her ability and stays on it. And she has grown into a spectacularly powerful woman.
This is such a cool and critical process to get. And if you've been following us for a couple months now, I always go back to the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching, in the writings, Lao Tzu said the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. Cool. 2,500 years ago, there's a philosopher saying that. If you happen to be a fan of the very vocal and vulgar David Goggins, who's ex-Navy SEAL, who's an ultra marathoner, he talks about the challenges in the life and how he chunks it down. And a lot of people call it thin slicing. You thin slice the task down, you get it simple. And as Tara said, if you can't articulate it, you're not going to have a snowball's chance and where of solving it. So these guys thin slice it down into the doable. Goggins on a 100-mile run thinks about the next mile. That's it. Just getting the next mile done. Think about the 100th mile. And he keeps going. I was listening to another Navy SEAL guy said, in Buds Week, in Hell Week, 5 days, they feed you every 6 hours. So it's absolute physical and mental torture for 5 hours and 45 minutes, but they feed you and give you a 50-minute break every 6 hours. He said, that's all I focused on, was getting to the next meal. I didn't focus on getting through the week. He said, once I got to the next meal, I got recharged, got a little food, got 15 minutes rest, and they call it thin slicing. And they thin slice every task down. And so our really successful people, thin slice, they chunk it down. That's an NLP term. We chunk down. We know what we need to do next, and we know what the next step is. But we also have big goals out there. are towards goals, right? The things that motivate us, the things that move us, the things we want, and we're really clear on what we want.
Okay, I have another one. So I have a client who
Boy, we're up today.
came to me, and she had a goal of being a really, really good trainer. And so what was getting in the way was confidence and all this kind of stuff. And today she is an incredibly successful trainer and coach and sort of does it all. And when I asked her, probably a year or two after we had done the breakthrough work together, and her career was taking off and everything had changed for her. And what I said to her was, what's your thing? Like, what is it that you hold on to most? Is it, list all these things. And she said, well, what I do is I remember that I didn't believe in myself to do what I thought that I wasn't confident yet enough to do. Okay, so she remembered that past perspective, that past belief she had that I can't do something because I don't feel confident enough to do it. And she says, I override that every day. So basically, I wait for the confidence to follow the action. And she says, so now I just do it in reverse. And so every time I think to myself, I can't do this yet, I'm not confident enough to do this, instead, I do it and say to myself, once I do it, then I'm gonna be confident after. And so it was this trick of like, it's, when people say like, fake it till you make it, that is like, we embrace that wholeheartedly, right? Fake it till you make it, because all of us are kind of faking it. Alan's hitting me. Because all of us are kind of faking it in a way, right? We're all sort of like doing our best, hoping for the best, taking all the pieces of what we believe are going to, propel us in the direction of success, and then giving it a shot. And so when we make it is after we've been, using everything we have. And it does take a little bit of faking in terms of, I don't necessarily have the confidence. I have the confidence afterward. And so I thought that it was such a beautiful piece of advice for somebody who wants to just keep driving and pushing themselves to flip the intuitive feeling of I'm not yet confident enough, flip it around, and then imagine that confidence that comes after.
A million years ago, in the era when Tony Robbins used to mail out a cassette tape every week. Yeah. So back in the late 80s, early 90s, you subscribed to Tony's Tape of the Week. He had one broadcast that talked about good fortune is the product of bad fortune, where you go out and you learn from your mistakes. All these people who think have this brilliant good fortune, yeah, they have good fortune because they bring in a ton. There's Connor just pinging. Hey, Connor, I just gave you a shout out as an example of a guy who focuses on what he wants. But people who take action, they don't always succeed. They're not always successful at every step of the way. However, they keep going. They keep going. They keep thin slicing. They keep chunking. They keep focused on what they want. They keep taking action. And cumulatively over time, both their mistakes and their successes come together to form the body of who they are. I mean, if you do nothing, you learn nothing. Mm-hmm. And if you keep doing the same thing you've done every day for the last however many days, you don't learn anything, you don't grow. And so our clients, our successful clients, I think another key piece is their ability to expand and grow. Tara mentioned the woman who's gone on to be a really successful coach. She came right up against her stuff every time she was in a training. Mm-hmm. Her critical thinking was actually holding her back until she worked with Tara the first time. And that aha experience, that, whatever work they did, opened her mind to possibilities. And again, let's move all over the marketplace here. Our clients are examples of this all the time to Tara and I. But you hear people like Joe Dispenza talking about this, about letting go of the past and being open to the possibilities, right? It'd be about being open to the possibilities. And I think our limiting beliefs, the things we believe in that don't empower us, hold us back from the possibilities. And in the work we do in NLP as NLP coaches, is we clear out our clients' limiting beliefs about what is possible, right? That's our job as coaches, to help clients get through their limiting beliefs and for them to believe that they're capable of getting what they want. And they are.
Yeah. And it works really well. I just want to mention our trauma clients. So both Alan and I have spent a lot of time working with people who have really acute trauma. So whether it's trauma that happened in one singular event or a sequence of traumatic events, we've both dealt with a lot of this. And one of the commonalities in the people that we speak to after some time has passed, right? So it may have been, months or years since they have cleared their trauma with us. And the common thing that I notice in my clients, I work, mostly almost only with women in terms of trauma. I probably have only worked with women in trauma. Yeah. And what they have in common is this shared, I have a few of them whose trauma is still relevant to their everyday life, right? So people who either have injuries from a traumatic accident, or people who have like a condition or like some situation which is going to continue to call attention to the trauma, right? So some of us have trauma in the past where like once it's dealt with, we can just like get over it, put it behind us, acknowledge it only made us, stronger, move forward, and the rest of the world, if it's our choice, never has to know or hear about it again. Other people, their trauma's like out there. They have to be able to face it. And when I talk to those women who have been able to successfully let go of their trauma, like truly, genuinely are no longer experiencing pain or suffering or any sort of negative emotion around their trauma, what they'll tell me is when they tell the story, they own the story now. And what they don't do is they don't get sucked into people who want to hear about the pain and the suffering so that they can relate to that. They define their story. They acknowledge that, of course, there was pain and suffering, and they don't dismiss it in any way, but they won't dwell there. And so when they tell their story now, it's framed in the lessons that they learned, the capacity that they had to get through it, the ability that they had to recognize their own resourcefulness when it comes to their trauma, and how they define themselves now. And in retelling the story, it's like a whole sense of power that they get without diminishing the significance. If there was a wrongdoing, the wrongdoing is still, acknowledged, but where they focus and they take ownership of that. And that is probably one of the most powerful ways to listen to people talk about the trauma, the real trauma that they've been through.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So owning your story.
Yeah, owning all of it, and owning your future as well. When you give up your story, you also give up your future. I mean, again, Tara and I read outside the body of knowledge known as NLP a lot to look at why NLP works when it does. And, Viktor Frankl, in his books, Man's Search for Meaning, actually articulated quite clearly the people who were focused on the future. He called it, and he actually created a therapy called logotherapy, which is, logo in Greek means meaning, so meaning therapy, that the people who had meaning, and meaning is in the future, they're focused on the meaning of their life in the future, could let go of the experience of the present and actually move through it to get to the future. And I think you can find examples of that everywhere. And what Tara and I are sharing right now is our experience of that very phenomenon with our clients. And so, Tara mentioned that I do a lot of work in trauma. And for so many people in trauma, one of the key determinants to move forward is, I've had enough. I'm prepared to pay whatever price it is to not live like this anymore. I am not damaged. I'm injured. I am not permanently, irreparably broken, and I've had enough. I'm not prepared to live another day like this. My good friend Shane, when he and I were fortunate to work for each other, it was exactly that moment in time when he just had enough. He could not exist like that anymore. And he is one of the toughest guys I know. So when he made that transition to enough, I'm moving forward, of course, his life moved forward and continues to move forward with great speed. And I see that in so many places, having traveled a lot in North America teaching and helping people with trauma. I've seen that story play out so many times. Some people accept their past, accept their reality, and they haven't come to that point. I don't know how to express it any better. It's got to end. I'm ready to move forward.
Yeah.
And again, we hear that story repeated in other schools that we visit as well, and in larger players.
I have a client who was involved in something where there was a big systemic problem at a hospital level, actually. And she was traumatized by it, and she really felt, this incredible need to make change, which was absolutely necessary. So this was like, she had an experience that lit the fire for her to kind of lead this revolution amongst like-minded people of like, this has to change. We can't let the hospitals around birth and hospitals and everything else. And she said to me, I ended up doing work with her. We got through, she let go of the trauma. She came back to me when she was pregnant again a year or two later. And she said, I'm on this mission. And she said, I am still doing it. And I am absolutely like gathering momentum. And she said, it's so interesting because she had thought that if she let go of the trauma, that she would lose that passion. She thought she was doing
that is
something
such a
really
good point. Wow.
important, right?
Such
She
a good
was going
point.
to create change, but she thought she had to hold on to her pain to keep feeding that change. And she said, you know what I did though? She said, I kept remembering you saying to me once, Tara, that you will not lose your fire.
Yeah.
You'll just be able to get better results, because the emotion will be tearing you apart. And she said, and you were absolutely right. And that's her success story for her was, I didn't have to feel pain every day to know how important it was that this never happens to anybody again, right? She was driven by what she was creating, not the pain she was avoiding.
Yeah.
Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so,
And then
sorry.
one more.
Tara's point there about thinking you need the trauma, to need that stimulation, to need that pain to be inspired. I was working down in the States and I was hanging around with the cast of a play, and they were on the road and they'd all been traumatized. It's a play about the Afghanistan war. It's a moving play. It's incredibly moving. Tom Brokaw interviewed the crew when they were in New York. 80% of the crew are traumatized. And even though there was myself and another doctor, there was a doctor of psychology in the crowd that focuses on trauma, these actors believed that they had to hang on to that pain to be inspired.
Right, yeah.
And it was, I probably went to half a dozen of their four or seven presentations, their play, at least half a dozen. And I couldn't go anymore, because I would watch them get triggered, especially in the Q&A afterwards. They were getting triggered back into the trauma. And so this belief, and there's another belief like that one, Tara, it's similar, where military people who have lost comrades in battle, lost their mates in battle, refuse to let go of the trauma because they think they'll be doing a disservice. It'll be disrespectful to their peers who have passed. And
That's
nothing
common to a lot of loss, right? Anyone who's lost somebody can relate to that, I think, often.
Yeah, and to when we talk about growth, whether it's post-whatever growth, but post-trauma growth, that post-trauma growth comes at its best, at its fullest, when you let go of the trauma, take the lessons forward, and prevent others from being traumatized, or make sure other people know that there's life after trauma. That's where the real growth is.
And you can take that down to a micro level. So people who have dealt with trauma, that's going to be precisely relevant. And then you can take it down to a micro level. So we all kind of do it. I know I do it, where you kind of like dwell in your own pain a little because you kind of want to stay angry at your husband because you didn't do the dishes. Or like,
well, there was full disclosure.
But like, you can, everyone can take it into their own life on these really much smaller scales though, right? Where we think like,
absolutely.
You ruined my morning, and so I'm going to stay pissed off about it because I'm like, I feel like that's going to drive my action to cause you to change, right? Like that. So we do this in these smaller scales all the time. And it's, again, if you don't need to hold on to your pain. And I would say our successful clients, the ones that live these lives, ourselves, the stuff that changed for us and our clients, is that acknowledgement that there's never any change that requires a negative emotion to make it more successful. Every change that is going to be positive and good in your life and in the life of others can be motivated better by a positive feeling attached to it. And that's hard to remember. We live, breathe, walk, talk this stuff, and I still have to remind myself, let it go, Tara. Find the thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to the last little piece. We just have a minute left here, and I'll let you close it. But I want to just mention, I think also one of the common things is that our most successful clients, and I have talked to many about it because it's a metaphor that spoke to me, and so I've talked to lots of our clients who come back and talk to us about it, is the ability to recognize that counterintuitive need. So in a nutshell, we know that our bodies and our minds and our, we have all these different levels of mind, body, and emotion and feelings and all this kind of stuff. And we're often misled. So if you think about it, if you need water, your body has this brilliant way, the system says, I'm gonna make you feel thirsty, and that will prompt you to go get yourself some water, because water is what you need, right? And if you listen to it right away, you go get yourself a glass of water, and you have water, and you feel better, and it all works. But if you ignore that feeling initially, or you're unable for some reason to get yourself that hydration that you need, your body is gonna continue to get thirstier and thirstier and thirstier. And if you still don't address that need, guess what happens? If you end up in a place where you're so dehydrated that your body starts to sort of shut down, it's no longer going to feel like thirst. And the last thing you're going to do if somebody comes up to you and says, hey man, there's a water, hole, because now we're on the African Sahara, like I always imagine, like 3 miles from here. If you check in with your body and go, okay, just let me check what I feel like doing right now, I guarantee your body is not going to respond if you're, a few days dehydrated with like, I feel like hiking for 3 miles.
I'm going to get there right now.
Right? What your body feels like doing is probably shutting down and laying down, and you're going to die. And so in those moments, you have to act counterintuitively. You have to bypass the feeling and instead ask yourself, what do I need right now?
At that moment, your body's becoming your mind. Your body is thinking for you. You need to do, as Tara says, become counterintuitive, bypass your body.
And so you ask the question to yourself, what do I actually need right now? What is it that I don't have that I need right now? And the answer is going to be water. And then you need to motivate yourself and get yourself to stand up, because once you get there and you get the water, your body is going to respond in the way that it's going to respond when you've been dehydrated. It's going to get energy again and health and everything else. And so that really important aspect of being able to sometimes, mostly you just want to listen to the thirst, right? Mostly you listen to your body and you listen to all the signals, everything else. But when you've been ignoring something for a long time, or when it's been unrecognized for a long time, you've got to do counterintuitive. And so people who are depressed may feel like they want to go to bed, or people who are anxious may want to stay inside. And you've got to have that tenacity within yourself to do that counterintuitive response instead, and get up and go for a run, or get out there. And I think the really successful people recognize that and are able to do that work.
So everybody on this call and everybody who's been watching knows somebody who struggles. So it could be you, right? And the big problem is when we're struggling, when we're stuck in past states. We're bringing the past into the present. And when we're stuck, Tara and I know from working with each other and working on ourselves and working with our clients, when we're stuck, we're not doing what we're meant to do. Our families suffer, the people around us suffer. We're just not living the way we want to. And so we like to imagine, I encourage you to imagine, what would life be like if you could just blow through your limiting beliefs? If you could be a Connor, right? Who just gets through his stuff. He focuses on what he wants and he goes and gets it. And he lives the dream, 23 sled dogs. So imagine that for a moment, that whatever you want. And it's not about just thinking about it, manifesting. It's about overcoming the burden you're pulling, the emotional sled you're pulling, and planning for the future and focusing and taking action to get it. This isn't just straight manifestation. This is action oriented. And so, we really encourage you to take that. This is what we live in here at Inspired Outcomes. We live this every day with our clients. And so reach out to us. Tara and I offer you free 30-minute consultations. If you're up against something, reach out. Book a free 30-minute session. Welcome to Take Action Tuesdays, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Yeah, I got through it. Cheers.
That was awesome.